Before we begin, if you're serious about understanding how real people survived real collapse, subscribe to After the Sirens and leave a comment telling me which historical survival skill you want covered next. This channel exists for historians and survivalists who want depth, not surface-level storytelling. When plague swept through medieval Europe, it did not announce itself politely. Trade collapsed, fields went unharvested, markets shut down, and entire households were locked inside their homes. Survival depended not on strength or weapons, but on what was already stored, preserved and managed long before disaster arrived. Medieval families who endured did so because their pantries were designed for catastrophe. These were not accidents. They were systems built through generations of hard-earned knowledge. This guide breaks down 7 medieval pantry hacks that kept families alive through plagues, famine, and social breakdown, and shows how those same principles can still be applied today. Why medieval households treated the pantry as a survival system rather than a storage room. In medieval life, the pantry was not an afterthought. It was the household's lifeline. Food scarcity was expected, not exceptional. Plague, war, crop failure, and weather disruptions were constants. Because of this, families designed their food systems around durability, redundancy, and long-term preservation. The goal was not abundance for comfort, but stability under isolation. Today, this same mindset applies to anyone preparing for supply chain failure or long-term emergencies. How salt preservation turned weeks of food into months or years of security. Salt was medieval Europe's most powerful survival tool. Meat and fish were packed in salt to draw out moisture, halt bacterial growth, and create shelf-stable protein. Pork, beef, and herring could last an entire year when properly salted and stored in cool conditions. The lesson here is that preservation beats refrigeration. Modern equivalents include dry curing, salt brining, and vacuum-sealed salt preservation. A single preserved protein source can anchor an entire food strategy during crisis. You know, drying food was really the backbone of medieval calorie storage. Drying reduced the weight, the volume, and, well, the risk of spoilage. Apples, pears, onions, peas, beans and herbs were typically sliced and dried near hearths or up in lofts, and dried foods could be rehydrated into stews, which extended meals and honestly helped conserve fuel. These days, dehydration is still one of the most reliable low-tech preservation methods out there. A modern household can, for example, air-dry herbs, dehydrate vegetables, and store them in airtight containers for use all year round. So, grain management played a crucial role in preventing starvation, even when bread was, well, scarce. Medieval families almost never relied solely on baked bread. Whole grains like barley, oats, rye and spelt were stored intact, since milling increased the risk of spoilage. These grains could be boiled into porridge, cracked into soups, or simply ground as needed. This flexibility allowed families to stretch calories during shortages. Modern survival planning, really benefits from storing whole grains rather than processed flour, as it helps preserve both shelf life and nutritional value. Why fermentation quietly protected families from malnutrition and disease. Fermentation was not culinary fashion, it was survival chemistry. Sauerkraut, fermented turnips, ale, and small beer preserved nutrients and made unsafe water drinkable. These foods, honestly, supported gut health, and provided vitamins during winter and plague isolation. Today, fermentation remains, well, an overlooked survival skill. Learning to ferment vegetables or brew low-alcohol beverages can provide both nutrition and water safety during infrastructure failure. Root cellars, you see, functioned as a sort of natural refrigeration, all without the need for any modern technology. In the medieval era, pantries were often constructed underground or built directly into thick stone walls. Root vegetables, such as carrots, beets, turnips, and cabbage, were kept in these cool, dark and humid conditions, which, well, significantly slowed their decay. Even during the height of summer, these spaces managed to remain remarkably stable in temperature. These days, the modern equivalents include things like basement storage, insulated cool boxes, or even buried containers. Temperature control without the use of electricity is, honestly, still one of the most valuable survival techniques one can have at their disposal. Now, as for herbs and spices, they served a dual purpose in medieval kitchens, acting both as food preservation tools and as medicine. Sage, thyme, rosemary, garlic and cloves, for instance, were stored not merely for their flavour, but for their remarkable antimicrobial properties. These herbs help to preserve meats, reduce spoilage, and quite importantly, support immune health. Medieval households really did understand that food and medicine were, in many ways, inseparable. Today, growing and drying medicinal herbs provides both culinary and health benefits in long-term emergencies. When supplies began to dwindle, rationing systems truly ensured survival. Medieval households, you know, would carefully calculate their daily consumption. Stews, in particular, were favoured because they allowed for precise portion control and, well, could be extended almost indefinitely. Bones, grains and vegetables were reused again and again, making every bit count. This disciplined approach, honestly, prevented panic consumption. Modern households can take a page from this by planning meals around expandable base dishes and, perhaps most importantly, tracking food use deliberately during a crisis. The enduring lesson medieval pantries offer modern survival planning is quite profound. These systems were not built on fear, but on preparation. Medieval families survived plagues because they simply assumed disruption was inevitable. Their pantries were not stocked for convenience, but rather for isolation, scarcity, and resilience. The same principles, really, remain relevant even in an age of fragile global supply chains. If this guide gave you something genuinely useful, do subscribe to After the Sirens, share this video with someone who takes preparedness seriously, and leave a comment with the historical survival topic you'd like explored next. This channel exists to preserve knowledge that still matters.